Hey folks, hope everybody's doing well. This is a short illustrative presentation to help explain the structure of the midterm presentation, mark out the way I see it as being structured, and then discuss some things you're going to want to be mindful of, some things to do, some things to not do, in terms of how to get the best results for the presentation. So what you're going to be doing is, and I think for most folks, this will work best in terms of recording, is to do it in Zoom, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. And then from within the Zoom session, you can share your screen and then go into Microsoft PowerPoint, go into full presenter view, and you'd be good to go at that stage. So this is entitled my presentation. This is sort of, to get us off the ground, midterm presentations, what to do, what not to do. I've divided it appropriately into two sections. What to do, and the what to do section is basically what your presentation should look like in terms of its structure and design, and then the what not to do, tips and tricks to avoid doing, basically. So what to do. This is your title slide. Obviously, your title should not be my title, but it should be the title you've chosen that best reflects your ideas about self-determination and the right to self-determination. You should, of course, introduce yourself by your full name. Hi, I'm Henry Savak, and tell us the title of your presentation and your approach to self-determination, and then move on from the title slide to the second slide. So the second slide is intended to unpack your approach, whichever approach you've chosen or combinations of approaches you've chosen. So here is where you would set out the answer to the question above. Basically, what does the right to self-determination mean? What philosophies do you think are the strongest, most coherent, most favorable to this question? A basic answer can draw on Freeman and basically explain why you've made the choice you've made. A stronger answer will also involve some thinking outside the strict terms of Freeman's article. So when I'm grading this slide as you're talking, what I'm looking for is also how can you justify and develop your position with reference to earlier course readings, not necessarily in the sense of citing page numbers and quotations from prior readings, but in the sense of being able to speak to ideas about sovereignty, the sanctity of borders or the lack of sanctity of borders, statehood, and so on and so forth. So a really good answer can sort of demonstrate how this connects to this broader basket of concerns and doesn't only summarize what it is Freeman is saying. You don't have a ton of time. Fluency and moving well from point to point is always important, and keeping on point as you work through the presentation is really going to be key. You can use more than one slide for this section. And in fact, you can use more than 4 slides for the presentation as a whole. I've designed my model here around 4. But do remember the time limit. I'm not going to start penalizing you if you go to 4 minutes and 3 seconds, but there is a limit to how long I can keep watching before I have to keep on grading other presentations. Your case study slide then should unpack a little bit of your case study. So Scotland, Catalonia, Rojava, etc., whichever one you choose to focus on. Try to distill the key ideas. And this, by the way, is a good workplace skill in the sense that, very often at work that requires writing, whether it's policy writing or advising or something like this, people don't want to read 5 pages. They want to read half a page. And the challenge is to make that half a page so effective that it teaches them something that is relevant and helpful to them. And in a way, this is your challenge here too. It's to make those 4 minutes really count. And so doing this is really good preparation for a lot of the writing that people actually do in real life, so to speak. As needed, a map or image of boundary lines, protests, etc. are all fine. You can enhance this. Like I said, you can have more than the minimum number of slides. The minimum number is 4. You can have more than the minimum number of slides as it helps you to make progress through the ideas. You should not need to do a bunch of exhaustive research or a ton of research at all beyond what I have given you. Yeah, you can check encyclopedia entries, the odd New York Times article for dates, recent events, things like this, and that's all helpful, but you really shouldn't need to add a whole lot in this regard. And the last but not least slide is your UN Charter slide. So this is where you are going to amend a section of the UN Charter as per my earlier instructions. The text in black over here, Articles 1 and the first part of 2, or paragraphs 1 and the first part of 2, pardon me, are copy pasted from the Charter itself. And then this is where you would add in your amendments, your ideas, your changes. So I did a very silly one over here, and like you should totally not do that because I don't think that's a very defensible position, honestly. But the point is, I'm just trying to give you a visual sense of what this would look like in your presentation. It could look like this. As needed, you can trim away some of the text from the copy-pasted sections of the UN Charter in order to give your section a little bit more room. That would be fine. And then you can wrap up on this slide. Like I said, you can have more than the minimum 4 slides as long as you respect the timing and the structure of the presentation. So this is a quick and dirty overview of what to do. Now, let's talk quickly about what not to do, things that I found don't work well. So in Zoom, you can have the same background I have right now, which is to say this blurred background, especially if you have roommates or if you're like me and you have a whole bunch of papers and half graded honors theses sticking off from your shelves and it looks a little bit messy. You can use the blurred background as a way of putting the focus on you during the presentation, and that's fine. Zoom has a lot of options, some of which would be a little bit distracting, and you definitely should not use those. Even just virtual backgrounds that have movement and glittery lights and stuff like this are not a good idea for this. We want the focus to be on you. You don't have to use a virtual background as long as your background is reasonably neat and tidy behind you. Go ahead and use that. And do your best with lighting. I mean, right now I have a desk lamp and my window's half open. It's not professional lighting by any means, but it gets the job done and it works fine for what this is. So there's no problem there. So other things to perhaps avoid doing, Microsoft PowerPoint has some interesting design templates in them. And by interesting, I mean really not ideal. This is one of the ones that PowerPoint oh so helpfully suggested actually for that slide. So in PowerPoint's design template system, that slide became this. And this is really not good. If you do use their templates, there are some that are fine. They're neat, they're tidy. It's no problem to use them, but just be careful of these design ideas that don't really work well. Similarly with color combinations, sometimes people wind up with color combinations that are really less than ideal. So anything to do with red text, really red text at all is probably not the best, and definitely on purple or green backgrounds does not really give the best impression or the greatest readability. Just to wrap up this section, this is actually kind of really going back to what to do for this last slide, but I've used this hierarchy by Kieran Healy, who's a sociologist at Duke, to think about the work that you're doing when you're presenting. Now, this was initially intended for situations where you have a paper written and you're developing a talk based on that paper. In this case, that's not quite the case yet. So we can remove the word paper up from over here and replace it with argument or idea. But then the same basic structure holds. If your work is bad, if your argument or idea is misunderstanding the ideas in the course, if it's not on point with the ideas in the course, it won't matter how good your slides look. If your ideas are good, but the talk is not succinct, is not well organized, you get to 4 minutes and you've only gone through a quarter of your points, people won't learn how good your ideas and your understandings are. I won't learn it, our fellow students won't learn it. And lastly, if your slides are bad, it's hard to give a good talk. If your slides all look like this, it's going to be hard for people to read what the heck is on the screen in the first place, or like this, etc. So if good-looking slides, when they reflect a well worked out argument, a sound argument and understanding, and a well-organized talk, really enhance the whole thing, but they obviously can't substitute for your understanding of the key concepts and ideas. And this is my way of saying that ultimately, I'm not looking for you to perform miracles here. I'm looking for you to make an honest, serious effort to understand and articulate the ideas in Freeman's article, in Eldon's article, in this course really overall so far. And by doing that, perhaps making some mistakes, but then learning from those mistakes, we get to write a better written section of the midterm. And the whole thing becomes kind of a nice iterative learning experience for you, for me, and for the class as a whole.